interviewed for the court administrator's job a couple times, and then they called me third time and said, would you like to interview?
You ready?
I said, no. No, thank you.
Yeah.
Are you guys ready?
Fire in the hole.
Okay. Our light is on. We're on TV. I'd like to call the Monday, September 16 Oakwood City Council meeting to order. Would you please rise and join me with the pledge to the flag?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May I have a roll call, please, Lori?
Mayor Duncan,
Here.
Vice Mayor Byington,
Here.
Mr. Stevens,
Here.
Mrs. Hilton,
Here.
Mr. Epley.
Here.
And may I have a report on the minutes of our August 5 regular session, work session, and executive session, and our August 19 work session and executive session. Mrs. Hilton.
Yes, Your Honor, I've reviewed the minutes of 5 of those meetings, and I found them to be correct and complete, and therefore I move that they be adopted as written.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. So ordered. I do have a status report this evening. It's to recognize Constitution Week. Whereas September 17, 2019 marks the 232nd anniversary of the drafting of the Constitution of the United States of America by the Constitutional Convention. And whereas it is fitting and proper to accord official recognition to this magnificent document and its memorable anniversary, and to the patriotic celebrations which will commemorate the occasion. And whereas Public Law 915 guarantees the issuing of a proclamation each year by the President of the United States of America designating September 17 through 23 as Constitution Week. Now, therefore, under the power vested in me, I, William D. Duncan, Mayor of the City of Oakwood, hereby proclaim the week of September 17 through 23 as Constitution Week, and ask our citizens to reaffirm the ideals of the framers of the Constitution had in 1787 by vigilantly protecting the freedoms guaranteed to us through this guardian of our liberties, remembering that lost rights may never be regained. Thank you very much for allowing me to do that. Next item on our agenda is we have 2 special visitors here this evening. Our first visitor is from the Ohio Auditors of State Office, Joe Braden. Joe, welcome, and come down and tell us what you have for us.
Well, thank you, Mayor. It's great to be here again in the city of Oakwood. On behalf of Auditor State Keith Faber, and to present the city of Oakwood the Auditor State Award. It's important to note that this puts the city of Oakwood in a very select group. The Auditor State audits nearly 5,900 entities, and less than 8% of those entities are even eligible for this award. The Auditor State Award is presented to local governments and school districts that, upon completion of the financial audit, meet the following criteria for a clean audit report. And I always like to read through this criteria so everybody realizes how much it takes for this to happen. It takes a little bit of everybody here in the city. This entity must file financial reports with the Auditor State's Office by the statutory due date without extension via the Hinkle system and in accordance with GAAP principles, generally accepted accounting principles. The audit report must not contain any findings for recovery, any material citations, or any material weaknesses. It must not contain any significant deficiencies, any uniform guidance findings, or questions cost. The entity's management letter must contain no comments related to any ethics referrals, any question costs less than the threshold per the uniform guidance, any lack of timely report submissions, any bank reconciliation issues, any failure to obtain a timely single audit in accordance with uniform guidance, any findings for recoveries, public meetings or public records issues, and the entity shall have no other financial or any other concerns. As I said, this award represents all of the city employees here that strive each day to achieve this accounting excellence. I also want to recognize all of you all, the council members, the mayor, city manager, and everyone that have done an excellent job in accounting for all the dollars here in the city of Oakwood. But especially I would like to recognize Cindy, and if she would like to come up here. I specifically want to recognize her for her outstanding leadership, her professionalism, and her commitment to fiscal integrity. Job well done, Cindy.
Thank you.
Congratulations. On behalf of Auditor State Keith Faber, I would like to present the Auditor State Award.
Thank you.
You're
I appreciate
welcome.
it.
Congratulations.
I just want to say that there are a lot of folks, and that's everybody across the city, all the department heads and my finance team that go into this. I know we hound people on a daily basis, especially someone in our department who's retiring at the end of the month. And Alice Young, who has been with the department for 41 years, we dot the I's and cross the T's, but we just make sure that everybody is doing what they're supposed to be doing. And we hope that our team, which consists of Alice Young, Linda Merker, Tracy Martin, who is moving up into the Assistant Finance Director position, Teresa Rushlow, Stacy Vreeland Mathis, and Tracy Davidson, all work hard every day and hopefully assist everybody in the city so that we continue to receive our Auditor of State Award. So I thank everyone for their commitment to helping us achieve this.
Great. Congratulations
Cindy,
to
you want to
you,
mention
Cindy.
Alice's comment about the pennies and
Oh, yes. Alice always says that if we watch the pennies, the nickels add up. So she's right. That is true. It does. And she is very fiscally responsible, as is the city. And again, kudos to everyone that helps out, and it's a great honor to receive this award.
And Joe, this is not the first time that you've been here.
No, it's not.
You've been here on what, I'm thinking we're on 6 or 7 in a
A
row?
whole bunch of them hanging.
Yeah, we got them hanging in the
Quite a
hallway.
few of them out there.
Yeah, I know, in my other job as a practicing CPA in public practice, when we talk about organizations that are well run and well managed, and when you talk about do you have sound controls over your fiscal responsibility, one of the terms that the accountant profession uses is what is the tone at the top, and the tone at the top sets the standard for the entire organization. And it's easy to say that the tone of the top would be the city council, but ultimately the citizens have elected us, and they believe that we are sound stewards and are fiscally responsible, as well as ethical and very community minded, as this is not really a political job that the 5 of us are doing here. It's more community service, and we say that over and over again. But when you talk about the tone of the top, it's Norbert Klopsch and all his direct reports, Cindy, you and your entire staff. But when you look through this entire organization, from public safety to public works to parks and leisure services, every one of our employees, takes an effort to conserve and be fiscally responsible for the resources that our citizens have given them. And for that, we should all be very thankful here in the city of Oakwood, because as I read in the paper, with more regularity than not, you said less than 8% of the organizations receive this award. That doesn't mean the other 92 have fiscal problems, but it does mean that we have a very high standard here, which everyone should strive to achieve. So I really appreciate that, and we appreciate you coming down also, Joe. Anybody else have anything they wanted to say?
No.
Okay.
Very well said.
All right. Thank you, sir. Okay. Give the auditor my regards. Okay.
Thanks, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, Joe.
Thanks for coming in.
Okay, and next we have, it's called Stormwater Placards. We have an issue there, and we have people from the Little Miami Watershed Network and the University of Dayton River Stewards. Welcome. Could you come down and introduce yourself, name and address for our record? And we are interested in hearing your report.
Sure. I'm Wendy Dyer. I live at 3813 Callaway Court in Bellbrook. I'm Claire Sullivan. I'm a student at the University of Dayton.
Great. Welcome.
You're welcome. Thank you. I'm with what's called the Little Miami Watershed Network, and it was founded back in 2015 as a result of the grant from the Dayton Foundation. The goal of the network is to network. I mean, it's to get the government organizations, the civic organizations, the nonprofits, the educational organizations to kind of work together and, you know, do some educational work and some conservation work, primarily on the Little Miami River with the watershed. As education is one of our big goals, we implemented what we call the Protect Our Water program, which is, you know, where we have the placards placed here. We buy the little medallions and the seal that goes on the back from, we get donations or we get grant money, and then we work with community groups to get them down. And that works really well because, one, means I'm not physically putting all of these down. In Oakwood, we put down right about 1,000 of them.
Wow.
Plus or minus about 25. I, kind of lose count here and there, but we right around 1,000. But we purchase them, and it works really well because then I'm not putting them down. And then, in addition to, when we, especially the youth groups that come out to put them, that gives us an opportunity for them to learn a little bit more about why it is important. Even within adults, it is amazing how many adults I've had that really think that the stormwater goes through the sewage treatment plant. And I'm just like, could you imagine how much water that would be? But so it's a good opportunity to work with, to educate our youth a little bit, and some adults do it. I wanted to publicly thank some organizations, one of which is the River Stewards, and Claire will tell you a little more about them. We also, the Oakwood SRO 4-H Club helped, Girl Scout Troop 33440, and Girl Scout Troop 33285. Both of those troops are from Centerville, so this is it's not always just Centerville helping Centerville, it's Oakwood helping, another group. It just depends on where we're working and who has the time to do it. And finally, the youth group from the Southminster Presbyterian Youth Group. And then, because of safety concerns, we had a couple of your residents help us. Nancy Jones, Carol Judge, Connie Kearns, and Pam Beatty, all Oakwood residents. And finally, I would like to thank Allison Bedford for helping me find all of these people, because she has a large network of volunteer people in the Oakwood and Centerville area that were all willing to help with this. So I'll let her tell a little bit about River Stewards, the UD program, because it's kind of interesting if you guys don't know much about it. Thank you.
I'm Claire. I'm a junior. I'm studying biology and sustainability at UD, and we connected through the Little Miami Watershed Network because I'm part of the River Stewards program. So I was the student that took on this project and was kind of in charge of, along with them, placing the storm drains. And I would first of all like to extend a thank you on behalf of the Rivers Institute for allowing us to place these medallions, which supports our mission to protect the natural resources in this area against what is largely human impacts. So the Rivers Institute is made up of about 50 students representing a great diversity of majors at UD. So we have art majors, science majors, math majors. Our focus is environmental leadership through civic engagement. Each River Steward completes at least 30 hours of service per semester, most of which relates to environmental conservation or justice. So I'm personally passionate about environmental education, which is why I took on this project. And with respect to the river, we have what we call in River Stewards upstream and downstream neighbors. So us at UD, we're your upstream neighbors and you're our downstream neighbors. And it's the duty of the upstream neighbors to protect and cherish the river for those downstream to still be able to enjoy it. And we hope that these medallions will remind residents that every piece of trash or even soap runoff from washing their cars can lead to the river and have impact on the wildlife. And Dayton's aquifer is actually one of the most unique in the world, and so we believe it's our duty and honor to honor its service to us by protecting it. And finally, as a river steward, it's my mission to spread awareness of spreading awareness about protecting the environment against climate action of our own doing, and I would like to leave you with a challenge. It is not just our option, but our duty to protect our common home, and global action cannot be accomplished without the action of smaller groups such as a city. The UN calls this sustainability, meeting the needs of the present without sacrificing the needs of the future. Myself and the Rivers Institute look forward to learning more about Oakwood's sustainability initiatives and to find opportunities to collaborate together and to pursue that we can be stewards of our common home. So once again, thank you so much for working with the Rivers Institute, and we look forward to maybe doing some more things with you. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you both for your service. This is a very unique project as well as a very valuable project. One of the things that our city manager told us in our session before, that Oakwood is actually, he called it the Continental Divide, that actually part of our stormwater runoff actually goes to the Little Miami watershed, whereas the other part, if you're closer to the northern part of Oakwood and the western part, that actually flows to the Great Miami watershed. So we have a vested interest in making sure that both of those watersheds are properly maintained for our neighbors downstream. So we appreciate your efforts, and I have a storm sewer right in front of my house, and it's got one of your medallions on it. So and you have one as well. All right. So we appreciate you coming here tonight and educating our citizens, because you're on Channel 6. Anybody else have any comments?
Yeah, so how long did it take to put those 1,000 placards up?
Once we actually got started, the volunteers were able to get it done in a little over a month. And
About a month?
I had one group that went out, one of the Girl Scout groups went out in the middle of May, and then, you know, it was a really, really wet May and June. So, and that's the one thing, is the sewer, the drain, to get the adhesive to stick, it does have to be dry.
Yeah, because so start to finish was probably more like 3 or 4 months, but it only took about a month. What you're saying? It took about a month total?
It took about a month.
Okay, because I've noticed a whole bunch early, and then now all of a sudden they're everywhere.
Right.
Yeah.
We had, like I said, we had that, we had a group go out early, and then we had one of the individuals, actually it was Hope Taft. I forgot to mention her, but she went out and did a bunch of them, and another, just while she was walking, she said, "Oh, I was just walking." She's actually the chairman of the Little Miami Watershed Network. She went out and did, and then it was raining and raining, and I had all these other groups, and so we said, let's wait till July when we know. Of course, and it was hot, but so we worked on it for a couple times, a little bit in May, and then we waited till the weather. But it only took them, it's a matter of getting out there. It doesn't take long to put them down. It's just,
I probably myself spent like 15 to 20 hours total within that course of time putting them down. So, and then I had help from a lot of other people.
Excellent.
So.
Well, thank you. It's a wonderful project. Thank you.
So what community do you go to next? Do you have somebody next on the list that?
We're probably Fairborn.
Okay.
Probably there's some places that need to be finished up in Beaver Creek, so we're trying to finish up those areas with a Boy Scout Eagle project, and then we're kind of leaning towards Fairborn.
Great. Well, good luck to you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
This, again, is the visitors portion of our session. If anyone else wishes to address council at this time, this would be your time to come down and state your name and address for the record. I see we have a scout in attendance. Do you have anything you wish to report to us? All righty. Well, welcome. That we will then conclude our visitors portion, and we will go straight to legislation. And Vice Mayor Byington has an ordinance he would like to introduce.
Yes, Your Honor. This is an ordinance to create a special fund within the fiscal records of the city to be known as the Special Improvement District Assessment Fund, and it is to declare an emergency for this particular ordinance. This ordinance creates a new fund within the city's accounting records to be known as the Special Improvement District Assessment Fund. It will allow the Finance Department to separately account for special assessments made in connection with projects that receive Property Assessed Clean Energy, or PACE, financing. Beginning in 2009, the General Assembly adopted various state laws to authorize and implement PACE financing, which is a mechanism for funding energy-efficient property improvements. The funding comes in the form of a loan, which is paid via special assessments against the property. It requires cooperation among 3 separate entities: the property owner, who is interested in making these kinds of improvements, a public or private lender, and a city or township that has statutory authority to levy special assessments. PACE financing does not involve the use of city funds. In our area, properties pursuing PACE financing petition to be part of the Dayton Regional Energy Special Improvement District, or the Dayton Regional ESID, and loans are made through the Dayton Port Authority. Oakwood's role in the process is limited to levying the special assessments against the property, and as they are paid, remitting the proceeds to the Dayton Port Authority to pay the loan. The PACE financing program has been in place for almost a decade, but to date, no Oakwood property owner has taken advantage of it. City staff is now aware of at least one property owner who's considering this option in the immediate future, and it is possible that others may wish to do so as well. The city manager has recommended that we establish a separate accounting fund for these special assessments to ensure that the monies are not commingled with other city assessments. After council adopts this ordinance, the funds must be approved by the state auditor before it can be established. To allow time for that to occur and have it in place before we receive our first anticipated PACE project application, I'm introducing this ordinance as an emergency measure this evening. So I make a motion that council adopt this ordinance as an emergency measure for the reasons stated in the ordinance above.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Do we have any questions or comments for Vice Mayor Byington? Because this is an emergency ordinance, it requires a 4/5 vote, am I correct? Okay. Hearing no other comments, Lori, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Duncan?
Yes?
Vice Mayor Byington?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Mrs. Hilton?
Yes.
Mr. Epley?
Yes.
And Vice Mayor Byington, you also have a resolution you'd like
Yes,
to...
a couple of resolutions. This first one is a resolution of accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the county auditor. Each tax year, the Montgomery County Budget Commission is required to certify its determination of the millage rates and amounts the city will receive from its existing property tax levies. For 2019-2020, the Budget Commission has determined that Oakwood will receive $1,132,012 from inside millage and $1,521,646 from its outside millage tax levies. These figures are consistent with the city's projection, and this is an annual resolution to accept the county's determination. And I move that council adopt this resolution this evening.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments for Vice Mayor Byington? Hearing none, Lori, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Duncan?
Yes?
Vice Mayor Byington?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Mrs. Hilton?
Yes.
Mr. Epley?
Yes.
And you have a resolution also regarding some collective bargaining issues.
Yes. This is a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a 3-year collective bargaining agreement with the Fraternal Order of Police, the Oakwood Lodge number 107, representing public safety officers and lieutenants. The current collective bargaining agreement covering our public safety officers expires on October 26, 2019, and our current agreement for the public safety lieutenants expires on November 3, 2019. Labor negotiations are often lengthy and sometimes costly, but during this bargaining cycle, the parties were able to come into terms for a new 3-year agreement for both the public safety officers and the public safety lieutenants. Council is pleased, and I will say very pleased, to report that it has occurred through a series of productive and thoughtful discussions without the need for formal processes, resulting in an agreement that is beneficial to the city, to our public safety officers and lieutenants, and to our residents and businesses. Mayor Duncan and myself have reviewed the new agreement as members of the council's Finance Committee, and this resolution will authorize the city manager to sign them. We would like to commend Chief Alan Hill for his efforts on the city's behalf, and also our public safety employees for their help in coming to these agreements. I move that council adopt this resolution this evening.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments for Vice Mayor Byington? Hearing none. Lori, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Duncan?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Byington?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Mrs. Hilton?
Yes.
Mr. Epley?
Yes.
Oh, and you have one last resolution. I'm
Yes,
sorry.
I do, Your Honor. This is a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a 3-year collective bargaining agreement with our Ohio Patrolmen's Benevolent Association, representing the public safety dispatchers. The current collective bargaining agreement covering our public safety dispatchers expires on November 3rd, 2019. As with the officers and lieutenants, the city entered into informal discussions with the Ohio Patrolmen's Benevolent Association, which is the union representative for our public safety dispatchers. We are pleased to report that these discussions were just as productive, and we have come to terms for a new 3-year agreement without the need for formal processes benefiting the city, the safety department, and our residents and businesses. Mayor Duncan and I have reviewed this agreement as well as members of the Council Finance Committee, and this resolution will authorize the city manager to implement it. Again, we commend Chief Alan Hill for his efforts on the city's behalf, and also our public safety dispatchers for their help in coming to a reasonable agreement. I move that council adopt this resolution this evening.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any other questions? Then, Lori, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Duncan?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Byington?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Mrs. Hilton?
Yes.
Mr. Epley?
Yes.
Thank you. That concludes our legislation. I think the agreements, I think you can't understate the efforts that Chief Hill did, as well as Jennifer Wilder and just staff. It goes back to my discussion earlier, tone at the top. You know, if you treat people fairly, they will treat you fairly, and that's what we have tried to do here. We have the best group of public safety officers we probably ever had, not to mention our lieutenants and dispatchers. So we're very excited about this agreement, and we look forward to working with those people for at least the next 3 years under this current
That's
agreement.
right, exactly.
All right. It's now time for our staff report, and we have an update on the Public Works Department, and that be you. Is that right? Great. Are you coming down? You're going to go down there? All right, great.
This popped on earlier. I don't know why the machines are crazy anymore. You know, I was having a flashback to the Mike Kelly days when Mike was our manager. We didn't have this PowerPoint stuff. You know, we had an overhead projector. Remember with the light? The only thing that could go wrong there is the light bulb burnout, and that happened from time to time. But anyway, I'm happy to be here tonight, and I want to talk to you for maybe 10 or 15 minutes about a lot of different activities within our Public Works Department. And so I'll jump right in, and I'm going to start off, I'm going to tie this to the Public Works Department, but I want to talk for a minute about these two events. I can say, like many others in the region here, that, you know, these two events were probably the most shocking things that have happened in the Dayton region, 2 in 1 year in a very, very long time. And, you know, two things that can happen at any time. And as a city manager, you know, you just never, you know when your community might be subject to something like this. The first one, the tornadoes in Dayton, I have to admit that I'm one of these people that listens to the weather reports, and I do kind of think at times there's too much of that and too much of warning and this and that and the other. But in other words, people tend to get a little bit soft in terms of heeding the reports and the advice and all that. I'll never forget that night when the tornadoes came through, being in my basement for the first time, really believing that this is real and this is close. And, you know, just 3 miles away is where this all hit. And I just want to mention to you something you already know, and that is that the morning after the tornadoes hit, Shelley Dickstein from the city of Dayton contacted me by cell phone and asked, if there's any way we could help with anything, some personnel, equipment, and what have you. And ultimately, we sent for 8 days, 8 full days, either 3 or 4 person crews from our Public Works Department down to East Dayton, down off Smithville, and a couple dump trucks and a front end loader, and picked up debris. And that was our contribution. We did it as long as they felt they needed the help, which again was 8 days. And it was something we obviously did very gladly. And through the FEMA process, we received a request from the city of Dayton to submit the time and a spreadsheet of the resources that we put into that, and that's all been submitted to FEMA. So we'll probably be reimbursed to the tune of about $20,000 for that effort. Obviously, we didn't do it for the money, but just want to point out that our Public Works Department did that, and with a very happy heart. For sure. And the second thing, the Oregon District shooting, I want to mention that last Monday, our nearly 20-year employee in the Public Works Department, Gary Rolfus, and his wife were at the White House. Their son, Brian, was the second Dayton police officer responding to the active shooter in the Oregon District that night. And I happened to be driving to a GovTech meeting at MVCC right at the moment when the ceremony took place in the White House, and heard the president talk about Brian Rolfus, and that he was right behind the first officer, basically charging this active shooter. And I've talked to Gary a couple times, once right after the event and once late last week. And he and his wife could have lost their son that night. But Gary did the same thing, or I'm sorry, Brian, as his other 5, fellow Dayton police officers in dealing with this horrible situation. And as we've all read and heard, if not for the swift action of those folks, the bouncer in front of Ned Peppers and others, this could have been much, much worse. So this really kind of hit home directly through an employee here in our Public Works Department. Now, moving to some public works projects, I'm happy to report that we've completed all the concrete street repair work for the year. This ended up being close to a 3-month-long project. You can see the list of streets completed there. Quite a substantial investment in the infrastructure. I ran into a longtime Oakwood resident a couple weeks ago at a grocery store, and he complimented the contractor in the city for it's a patchwork quilt sort of looking thing, but the manner in which we repaired Ridgeway in particular. And he asked me, how much more expensive would it have been if we had taken the whole street out? And while I didn't do a detailed estimate on that, I'm comfortable to say it would have been at least 3 times the cost. And the disruption to that neighborhood and the whole corridor there would have been quite substantial. So while this kind of, saw cutting of concrete street and taking sections out is time consuming and disruptive by itself, it's a lot better than the alternative. And I think we'll have the streets were last week sealed around all the edges of the repairs, and we'll be in good shape here going forward. We have $250,000 proposed for the 2020 budget for concrete work. There's a little bit on Oak Forest to do similar to what we did on these streets, and then there's quite a bit of concrete curb along Far Hills as you're heading north from Patterson. If you drive that slowly and take a look, you'll see a lot of curb there that we plan to do. And there's a number of the stormwater inlets that have the tops are broken, and that would all be put together in one concrete package. So $250 for that. This is a list of streets that were repaved this summer. It was completed about a month and a half ago. And of course, everybody who lives on those streets knows that they have a nice new street. And John R. Jurgensen Company did a great job again for us this year. So very happy with the work. Nearly $400,000 of asphalt work year. For next year, we have $300,000 budgeted, of which part of that will be for asphalt rejuvenation, which I'll speak about in a few moments. So the asphalt mill and overlay, which is what this is, project for next year, will be about half of what we did this year, so quite a bit less. If you think of our primary north-south streets, of course, Schroyer Road was rebuilt in 2017. We have State Route 48 or Far Hills Avenue program through ODOT for 2024. We just finished the concrete street on Ridgeway, and this year we did Hathaway. So the only remaining, and Schaefer Boulevard we did a few years back, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and it's still in very good shape. So the only remaining major north-south street is Delane, and that's the largest work area that we have planned for next year. The other one I'll mention is a few blocks of East Shantz Avenue between Patterson and the high school. If you drive that, if you know that stretch, you know there's a lot of patches in there, and you know, we've been doing some full depth repairs in-house in preparation for resurfacing that's planned for next year. And as I've mentioned to you before, the complete repaving of East Drive was done on Vectron's nickel, so to speak. This is because they put the new gas pipe in last year, and they paid this nearly $40,000 expense to renew that street. So East Drive should be in great shape for the next 15 years. The sidewalk curb and apron project was completed before school started, which was good news, and almost $200,000 invested in that. The 2020 project will be in all the right-of-way areas north of Patterson and east of Far Hills Avenue. So that's for next year. And we have $175,000 planned for that project. A few other quick comments here. The annual roadway restriping was completed about a month ago. That's just all around town, a lot of parking areas in the Far Hills Business District. We restriped the parking spaces at Lane Stadium, and then a lot of the handicap emblems and some other lane line striping. We annually test all of our traffic signals, and I know you've heard me say that for a community of 2.2 square miles, fairly small land area, we have an awful lot of people living here, 9,200, so our population density is significant. Well, for a 2.2 square mile community to have 17 signalized intersections, that's a lot of intersections for, again, a small community. You can go to rural areas and have 2 square miles and not have a single signal. So a lot of equipment there to maintain and test annually. I mentioned the rejuvenation earlier. This is a asphalt surface treatment. We typically apply 1 year or at certain times 2 years after we've overlaid a street, and this extends the life of the new pavement. And we're planning to spend about $30,000 yet this year, sometime over the next 4 to 6 weeks, treating the streets that we overlaid last year. So that's the last remaining roadway project we have planned for this year. And then the stormwater improvements, I commend the river stewards and Little Miami Watershed Network folks for their work. We do have a permit through the Ohio EPA, and it's actually part of a national permit for stormwater discharge, and it requires that we do certain tasks annually and then submit a report annually. Why having these placards now installed on all of our catch basin inlets is something we can report as a accomplishment in 2019, and that's significant. So again, I want to thank those folks. And we started a little stormwater improvement today. It'll continue on this week on Deep Hollow. Not a heavily traveled road, but if folks are driving down Deep Hollow this week, they'll see that we're dealing with a long-standing groundwater seepage problem there, and recently did a stormwater improvement off Skink and Spring Grove that will solve a little drainage problem in an alley. I mentioned these are small projects, but they're examples of the work that we can do in-house because we've got the skill set at the foreman level and with our workforce. The Vectron gas line project, I've mentioned the last 2 or 3 council meetings. It's very close to home this year for me because it's happening in my neighborhood, and I dug through an old file and found this little brochure from 2010, and this is something we received from Vectren officials when they first approached the city of Oakwood to inform us of their plans to rebuild all of the underground natural gas infrastructure in our city. And I remember leaving that meeting thinking, what? You're going to replace every main pipe and every service to every house and reset all the meters? And how's this going to play out? Well, here we are 9 years into it, and they're getting it done. It's a lot of work. Most of our citizens have already experienced it in their neighborhoods, but there's a few that haven't. It is disruptive, but I got to give the workers credit. They're out there every day, and they're just doing the work. And the current schedule has them completing the project by 2022. So we are real close to the end of this, and then we'll have a completely rebuilt natural gas infrastructure. So it'll be very good for Oakwood. And you can see the numbers there. 17, these are numbers that date back to 2010. I think they've actually increased a little bit now, but close to 2,000 miles worth of underground pipe, and then 150,000 nearly service lines from those mains to the businesses and or residential properties. So very significant project. And of course, again, we all know where the project is this year. This is my neighborhood on the north end near Irving, and then the area around Corona and Hadley where the work's taking place. So if all goes well, by the middle of October, the Miller pipeline trucks will disappear and the front end loaders and all the roadway patching will be completed. We do get calls from our residents about landscaping, restoration, in particular lawn areas, and that's ongoing, and they'll reseed, because a lot of seeding they've done the last month or 6 weeks hasn't taken, but they'll reseed everything in the fall, and then they'll be back in the spring to kind of redo landscaping as needed. Just a few quick comments on equipment that we purchased, and this kind of ties a little bit into our audit and the way staff operates here and the quality of the folks we have. I'm showing you here the 6 primary pieces of equipment that's operated within the Public Works Department that we replaced this year. And in white there you see the budgeted amount for these items, and then in that yellow color you can see what we actually paid for them. So you can see how close we are in terms of budgeting and actual costs. So again, these are all pieces of equipment. I won't run through them individually, but that we need in our day-to-day operation of the Public Works Department. I need to mention the refuse program. About 40% of our workforce, 4 days a week, or actually 5 days a week, is engaged in all of our various refuse programs. And I'll repeat this many times, but on the recycling front, the most important thing now for our citizens is to become educated on what's recyclable and what isn't. And I'll become a broken record on this comment now, but it used to be the guidance was if you're not sure, throw it in the recycle bin and it'll get sorted out later, but that's now flipped, and if you're not sure, you're to throw the item in the trash. That's a better way to do it. It keeps the quality of the recycle stream, this mixed stream that we generate, of higher value, and just helps with the whole recycling process. So that's important. Our leaf collection season begins here soon, believe it or not, in about 4 weeks. And so for that 10-week period, we'll be picking up leaves on a 2-week cycle like we do every year. And for those of our citizens that use special pickups, we suspend that program for those 10 weeks because we have so many employees working on the leaf collection. So if anyone has plans for a special pickup, they ought to call right now and get it scheduled, or just plan to wait until January. And then at the bottom there, we have a few do-it-yourself options, which I know you're familiar with, but we are seeing more and more citizens do some self-hauling, and it makes a difference. And in particular, the cardboard recycling, I'll call it center facility that we have down at the Krieger Field Dog Park is very valuable. The material that is delivered there is very, very clean. If you ever stop by and take a look at it, which means when we take it to a cardboard recycler, we get money for it. And so we encourage folks to recycle more and more of that, recognizing that it does require that they drive down there and self-dump that. We did, I'll mention here in a minute, we did get a grant to improve that cardboard section through the county. And then you can see the other do-it-yourself options there. So to the county grant, earlier this year, Jennifer Wilder led the effort to apply for grant money from the county, the Solid Waste District, under the Recycling Enhancement Program, and worked with two of our foremen to put together a application packet. We were successful in receiving $17,000 to purchase 2 new metal containers to hold the cardboard. And so when this is completed, we had to throw in about $7,500 of our own money, but it'll be a much more convenient place to drop off cardboard, and all 4 containers will be equally accessible, where now when you drive up there, sometimes there's only 2 there, but when there are 4, you tend to see the 2 that are near the ramp and use those, and a lot of folks don't walk up the ramp to get to the back one, so cardboard ends up being overflowing on the front too and getting onto the ground and all that. So this will be a neat little improvement to that area. And then I know I mentioned at my last update from Public Works that the Rotary Club continues this quarterly hazardous waste pickup, and it's also a wonderful program. It's a great way for our community to be rid of a lot of these sorts of items that you see on the slide here that are found all over in our garages and basements and you name it. And it's astounding. And I think some of you that are in the Rotary have worked this before. The volume of material that we continue to pick up. This program has been in place for at least 10 years, and I thought when it first started that after 3, 4, 5 years of it, that we'd start to run out of this stuff, but we don't. It's every quarter we Rotarians collect up several truckloads and take it down to the county. So it's a great program. There's a telephone number for folks to call to register for a pickup on October 26th, and it's free of charge. And my final 2 comments are about Kettering projects, because they're near and dear to us. They're very close to our shared corporation line. The first is the Shantz Avenue Bridge, and for those who use West Shantz, you know what I'm talking about. The project's been underway for feels like almost a year. I think it started maybe last April, and I'm happy to report that it is progressing well. It's on schedule, and they're hoping to open the bridge November or December. So sometime yet this year that project will be completed. And then the next one for Kettering is right off Ridgeway Road. They're at Dorothy Lane, and about 300 of our property owners in Oakwood will receive a little postcard notification this week from the city of Kettering. These are folks that live in Oakwood from the bridge location here up to about Peach Orchard and then east to Far Hills, kind of in that large area there. And they'll be provided information, an update on the bridge project, and be referred to the Kettering website where they can read up on the current status, and they can see what the selected public art component is for the bridge. And it's a little hard to see here on this slide, but that's kind of what the bridge will look like, kind of looking to the west when this thing is done. So it'll be a neat improvement, and it's in the design phase right now, albeit it's fairly close to being done, but it won't be bid until next October, and Kettering's expecting construction to start in probably December of 2020, maybe January of 2021, and then that too, like the Shantz Bridge project, will be about a 1-year, maybe a little bit less construction period. So it'll be a lot of activity there from, I guess, primarily in 2021. So. That's all I have tonight. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for the city manager? This Ridgeway Bridge, when they start that bridge will be closed like Chance is now?
It will be.
Yeah, okay.
It will be. And the Kettering is working on detour plans right now. ODOT is requiring them to formally lay out the signage and all that for the vehicular detour plan, and also one for pedestrians. And the vehicular one, the plan right now is to direct vehicles that are going southbound to make a left on Oakwood and then drive to 48, to Far Hills, and then turn right, and then around. And coming the other way, that they would drive north on 48 to Peach Orchard at the traffic light and make a left to get back to Ridgeway. So those are the two vehicular movements. The pedestrian one is a minor issue, and
all right.
When will the schedule for the leaf pickup, because we do it by streets and zones more or less, when will that usually come out?
It's probably already on the website.
Well, that's what I was going to say, is that
The yard debris, that's already on our website.
Oh, good.
But it'll be published in the Oakwood Scene, which comes out later this month.
Well, I knew it'd be in the Oakwood Scene. I was going to push for the website comment.
Yes.
Take a look at our new
It's already
fancy
on the website.
Yeah,
Yes.
go to our website. That's where you can see the schedule, so you know when to put your leaves out there, so they don't sit out for 2 weeks. Yeah, excellent. Thank you.
Right.
And the name of the website is? OakwoodOhio.gov. Thank you. All right, anything else for our Public Works Director? Would you like to come back to the dais, and then we'll grill you as your city manager report? Welcome, Mr. City Manager. Do you have another report for us?
I do, Your Honor, and it'll be very quick. I too got to thank Cindy again for her efforts and her finance department staff for the audit. So yeah, we all help, but it's the heart of the activity is in finance. So thank you, Cindy, for that. I also want to thank Carol for another successful pool season. She and I and Karen Early, Karen is Carol's direct subordinate, and Karen has personal responsibility for the whole pool. And we kind of joke about it, starting as early as February, that it's coming again. And there's just a lot going on in this part of the country to prepare a pool that's endured a winter, for a new season, and then to find all the staffing for it, and the concession, and the chemicals, and you name it, and then to just operate the thing. And they once again did a great job with that. As you know, we had our first meeting with the Budget Review Committee for this fall, and we presented the proposed capital plan for 2020, and that was well received. So over the next few weeks, Cindy and I primarily will be working on the detailed line item budget that will be presented to the Budget Committee on October 15th. So when we had 16 committee members at the meeting, so it was a good discussion. The first class for our 2019 Citizen Police Academy took place last Wednesday evening, and there are 10 different classes each Wednesday evening for 10 weeks, and the first one was taught by Chief Hill himself, and Chief reported that it was a great event. We have 12 citizens there attending, and they were very excited to be there and eager to hear about what our safety department does and how they operate. So that's a great program. And I got to end with Army football, only because, well, for two reasons. One, well, three. They're on my alma mater, so they're 2-1 now. And we beat University of Texas San Antonio on Saturday pretty handily. But the big game was a week before that, when we came ever so close to beating the University of Michigan in the big house. Is that what they call it? Mm-hmm. And I mean, in double overtime for that Army football team to just barely lose to University of Michigan, that was something else. So I want to just throw a shout out to the Army football team and mention, as you know, that I'm driving to New York Thursday morning of this week for my 35th college reunion. About 25
At West Point.
At West Point.
West Point.
That's Army, and about 25% of the 980 of my classmates that graduated with me are coming back to the reunion. So, and most importantly, my closest friends are all going back. So we're going to pretend we're 21 again, and as long as we can. So looking forward to that. So that's all I have.
Any other questions or comments for our city manager? Hearing none, we'll go to council comments. Councilmember Epley.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no comments tonight.
Councilmember Hilton.
Your Honor, just a couple things, some events I attended recently. 2 were sponsored by the Wright Library. I, for the first time, went to a story time at Smith Gardens. My son was never interested in story time, but it was very nice. It's a nice setting. And the other was at the library, the end of the year readathon or something, read on the lawn, and they had lots of great things. Boonshoft has a portable planetarium and snacks and activities. The other, and I didn't make it this year, but Mr. History, Mark Risley, gave me an update. The Classics on the Lawn, the car show they do at the Historical Society. He said they had 54 cars. The Boy Scouts brought pizza, and it was a great event. So looking forward to going next year.
Very good. Councilmember Stevens.
No comments this evening.
Vice Mayor Byington.
No comments, Your Honor.
And I also have no comments. We do have what, you have a comment?
Maybe.
Well, come on down here.
Visitor sections or
Well, we'll have you, we're on good time here, so come down and state, well, again, so people at home can hear you, if you can state your name and address for our record.
Jessica Rutter, 361 East Drive. Thanks. Street looks great, by the way. I did not come here intending to say anything, but while I was sitting here, I thought I might go ahead. A couple months ago, when DP&L came through and did the tree trimming, the yard was not exactly left in the best condition. Brick tiles for a walkway, torn up and strewn, trash, lots of water bottles, snack bags, debris from the branches themselves, logs, bits and pieces of branches left all over the place. I have 4 decorative trees that were being propped up with string. All of the strings were cut. One of those is now dead. But most concerning are the now completely dried out branches that are still hanging on the wires. I have attempted to contact DP&L about this. No response. I know, you're shocked. So I didn't know if there was anybody that might be able to help get somebody out. I'm not an electrician, but I can't imagine branches hanging on wires is a good thing. Fire hazard maybe. I don't know.
What's the address again?
361 East Drive. And I don't know if anybody else has come to you guys or if you've heard of anybody else with not so good landscape after they've come through, but I don't know if there's...
We'll take a look at it and see if we can reach out to somebody. Normally, we have somebody from DP&L that comes to our council meetings and sits here in the audience
well,
and listens.
this is just checking off those lucky boxes,
she's not here this evening, so... Okay, but we'll follow up on that for you.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
And I have pictures. Obviously, it's been cleaned up, but if anybody's interested.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks.
All righty. We then are adjourned. Thank you very much. Our next meeting is Monday, October 7, 2019. We are in fact adjourned.